Here's something that'll mess with your head. Everything you think you know about human nature might be wrong. Because there's a 67-year-old woman living in California right now who was tied to a toilet for 13 years as a child. And what the scientists did to her after she was rescued, that's the part nobody talks about. But here's what really terrifies me. We're all walking around with invisible chains from our childhood, and we don't even know it. Let me guess your story. You've got patterns you can't break. Relationships that feel weirdly familiar, like you're stuck in the same loop with different people. Maybe you hear your parents' voice in your head, criticizing every decision. Maybe you freeze when someone raises their voice. Maybe you people please until you're exhausted, but you literally can't stop. And here's what kills me. You've been told to just get over it or let it go. Like, trauma is something you can Marie Kondo out of your brain. But what if I told you there's a scientific reason why you can't just move on? What if your brain has literal structural changes from what happened to you before you could even speak? The case I'm about to tell you isn't just about one girl's nightmare. It's about all of us. It's about the invisible windows in childhood that, if they close, never open again. Comment chains if you feel stuck in patterns you didn't choose. Okay, let me introduce you to Genie, November 4th, 1970, Los Angeles. A nearly blind mother stumbles into a social services office, dragging a child behind her who looks about 7 years old. She's 13. When the social worker sees this girl, we'll call her Genie to protect her identity, she freezes. Because this teenager weighs 59 pounds, can't stand up straight, can't chew food, makes these animal sounds instead of speaking. And when someone tries to make eye contact, she physically recoils like she's been hit. Here's what they discovered. Genie's father locked her in a bedroom when she was 20 months old. For 13 years, she was strapped to a potty chair. Day and night. If she made a sound, he beat her with a wooden plank. He barked at her like a dog. Never spoke to her. Kept her in complete silence and darkness. Now, here's where it gets scientifically devastating. A 2022 study published in PMC found that severe childhood deprivation causes permanent white matter volume reductions in the brain that last over 20 years, even with intensive intervention. We're talking about the literal physical structure of your brain being altered by trauma. And Frontiers in Psychiatry confirmed in 2023 what Genie's case proved 50 years ago. There are critical periods in development. Miss them, and certain abilities, like grammar, like emotional regulation, like trust, might never fully develop. Your brain on childhood trauma isn't just damaged, it's rewired. And here's the part that'll blow your mind. You don't need to be locked in a room for this to happen. Emotional neglect, inconsistent parenting, verbal abuse, these create similar neural patterns on a smaller scale. So when you wonder why you can't just get over your childhood, your brain is literally structured around survival patterns you learned before you had language to describe them. Screenshot this if you need to hear it. Your trauma responses aren't weakness. They're proof you survived. Let me break down what happened next, because this is where the story gets complicated. And honestly, this is where you'll see yourself. Scenario 1. The father's psychology. First, let's talk about the father, Clark Wiley. Now, I need to be really clear here. Understanding why someone abuses doesn't mean excusing it, but if we don't understand the why, we can't protect future children or recognize these patterns in our own families. Clark's mother ran a brothel. His father was killed by a lightning strike. He grew up in chaos and violence, and according to reports, he likely had undiagnosed paranoid personality disorder. Here's what was happening in his brain. Extreme control needs. When you grow up powerless, sometimes you compensate by exerting absolute control over others. He believed Genie was retarded, his words, and instead of seeking help, he created a prison. This is the psychology of abusers. They dehumanize their victims to justify their actions. If Genie wasn't fully human to him, if she was defective, then he could rationalize the torture. Now, does this explain it? Yes. Does this excuse it? Hell no. But here's why this matters for you. If you grew up with a parent who controlled, belittled, or isolated you, they likely learned those patterns from their childhood. Hurt people, hurt people. Comment. Cycle, if you see your parents' trauma affecting you. Scenario 2, the mother's impossible position. Now let's talk about Irene, the mother. This one's harder because she was both a victim and an enabler. Irene was nearly blind. She'd been abused by Clark for years. He'd even tried to strangle her during pregnancy. She was completely dependent on him for survival. This is learned helplessness, a term coined by psychologist Martin Seligman. When you're repeatedly traumatized and every escape attempt fails, your brain literally stops searching for exits. You freeze, you comply, you survive. But here's the brutal truth. Irene stayed for 13 years while her daughter suffered. And in 1970, she finally walked into that social services office. So here's the question. Is she a victim or a perpetrator? The answer is both. And this is where so many of you get stuck. Maybe your mom didn't protect you from your dad's rage. Maybe she chose her addiction over your safety. Maybe she knew and looked away. You can acknowledge she had her own trauma and acknowledge she failed you. Both things are true. You can have compassion for her pain without excusing the harm she caused. This is what therapists call holding paradox. It's messy, it's uncomfortable, but it's the only way to heal. If you're watching this and thinking, wait, my situation wasn't that bad. Girl, listen to me. Your pain is valid even if someone else had it worse. Genie's case is extreme, but the principles apply to all of us. Scenario 3, the scientists who became exploiters. Okay, this is where the story gets dark in a different way. When Genie was discovered, UCLA scientists saw an opportunity. Test the critical period hypothesis. Could a teenager who'd never learned language acquire it after puberty? So they studied her. They ran tests. They wrote papers. Some even became her foster parents while simultaneously researching her. And here's what nobody tells you. They fought over who got to study her, like she was property, like she was a prized specimen instead of a traumatized child who needed healing. One researcher, Susan Curtis, later said, and I quote, "There is a hole in my heart and soul from not being able to see her that doesn't go away." You know what else doesn't go away? The trauma you caused by treating a child like a lab rat. In 1974, the funding dried up. And you know what happened? They abandoned her. She went into foster care, where she was abused again. She regressed completely, lost the words she'd learned, went back to silence. Here's the psychology lesson. Good people can do terrible things when they prioritize their goals over someone's humanity. Those scientists genuinely believed they were helping. They told themselves their research would benefit future children. But they got so focused on the data that they forgot Genie was a person. And before you judge them too harshly, ask yourself, when have you prioritized your own needs over someone else's pain? When have you stayed in a friendship because you needed something, even though you knew they were toxic? When have you used someone's vulnerability to make yourself feel needed? I'm not saying you're a monster. I'm saying we all have the capacity to dehumanize others when it serves us. The researcher's ambition, the mother's survival, the father's control. These are human patterns, just at different extremes. Comment, mirror, if this made you think about your own behavior. Scenario 4. What Genie taught us about you. So what did they learn? Grammar has a biological deadline. Genie learned individual words. Red, sad, big. But she could never string them into proper sentences, never understood complex grammar. Her brain scans showed she was processing language in the right hemisphere, the wrong side, because the left hemisphere's language centers had closed. But here's what this means for your life. Critical periods exist for more than just language. There are windows for emotional regulation, ages 0 to 3, secure attachment, infancy to age 2, trust versus mistrust, first year of life, healthy boundaries, toddlerhood. If those windows close without the right experiences, your brain compensates. But it's hard to rewire later. So when you wonder why you freak out when someone's slightly late, disrupted attachment, can't express anger without exploding, missed emotional regulation. Pick the same toxic partner over and over, familiarity seeking. It's not because you're broken, it's because your brain is doing exactly what it was trained to do in childhood. Okay, so here's the part where I tell you what you don't want to hear. You can't fix missed critical periods, but you can create new neural pathways. A 2023 study in Frontiers in Psychiatry on the neuroplastic narrative theory found that recovery from severe deprivation requires relational experiences. Safe, consistent relationships that your brain can use as templates. Here's your roadmap. Immediate steps. Start today. 1. Name your patterns. Write down 3 relationship patterns you repeat. Don't judge them. Just name them. I choose emotionally unavailable people. I people please until I'm exhausted. I shut down when there's conflict. 2. Trace them back. Where did you first learn this pattern? Who modeled it? This isn't about blaming your parents. It's about understanding your blueprint. 3. Give yourself permission to grieve. You're allowed to mourn the childhood you didn't have. Even if it wasn't that bad, you're allowed to be angry at your parents and love them. Both are true. Long-term healing, the real work. 4. Find your corrective relationships. Therapy, yes, but also friendships, support groups, even parasocial relationships like this channel where you experience consistent, safe connection. Your brain needs new data to build new pathways. 5. Practice reparenting yourself. When you're triggered, ask, how old do I feel right now? If you feel 7, talk to that 7-year-old like you would a scared child. I know you're scared. I'm here. You're safe now. I know it sounds woo-woo, but internal family systems therapy has a ton of research backing this up. 6. Accept the paradox. You will never have the childhood you deserved. That window closed, and you can still build a beautiful life from here. Both are true. Hold the grief and the hope. The harsh truth. Some people will never give you the apology you deserve. Your parents might never get it. The people who hurt you might never acknowledge the harm. Your healing cannot depend on their awakening. Genie never got justice. The father died by suicide the day before his trial. The researchers never faced real consequences. She's lived in silence for 54 years since her discovery. But here's what I need you to hear. She survived. And so will you. The fact that you're watching this video, seeking understanding, doing the work, that's proof you're breaking the cycle. So here's what we're doing next week. I'm breaking down why you're attracted to people who hurt you. The attachment theory, no one explains. Because here's what I've learned after years of studying this stuff. Genie's case is extreme, but her patterns are universal. We all have critical periods that shaped us. Childhood wounds that echo in our relationships. Patterns we didn't choose but keep repeating. A brain that's trying its best with the data it has. If you made it this far, you're ready to do the work. Hit subscribe so you don't miss next week because I'm going to show you exactly how to spot anxious, avoidant, and disorganized attachment in the first 5 minutes of meeting someone. And more importantly, how to heal yours. Comment rewire if you're committed to breaking your patterns. I read every single one, and I promise you're not alone in this. And listen, your childhood might have shaped you, but it doesn't have to define you. Genie never got that chance, but you do. Don't waste it.